Looking to start a podcast but don't know where to begin? Look no further. The team at Dodge Media Productions has 20 years of experience as podcast listeners and observing the industry and 8 years experience in podcast production. We can help you take your podcast from idea to fruition, and we'll make the process seamless and easy. We'll help you with everything from recording and editing to hitting the charts on Apple Podcasts. So what are you waiting for? Contact us today and let's get started. DodgeMediaProductions.com.
You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Dodge Movie Podcast. This is episode 177, and we are going to talk about the 2008 film House Bunny. We watched it on Amazon for $3.99, and this was Superfan RJ's pick from one of his winning guesses last year. House Bunny is directed by Fred Wolf, who did 1995's Tommy Boy, 2001's Joe Dirt, 2010's Grown Ups, and 2004's Without a Paddle.
Good friend of David Spade.
Yes, exactly. It stars Anna Faris, Colin Hanks, Emma Stone, Kat Dennings, Christopher McDonald, and Beverly D'Angelo. The DP was Shelley Johnson, who did Jurassic Park 3 in 2001, Wolfman in 2010, Captain America: The First Avenger in 2011, and most recently 2020's Greyhound. It was filmed at the Playboy Mansion, Farmers Market, USC, the Pink Motel, and Jack's Cadillac Diner in Westwood and in Sun Valley. The writer is Karen McCullough, who did Legally Blonde in 2001, 2009's Ugly Truth, Kirsten Smith, 1999's 10 Things I Hate About You, 2009's studio was Columbia Pictures, and Happy Madison, which explains kind of the director tie-in as well as some of those other films. The synopsis for this film is: after Playboy bunny Shelley is kicked out of the Playboy Mansion, she finds a job as a house mother for a sorority full of socially awkward girls. I have about 5 taglines for you.
All right, let's see if they got one in there.
Bodaciously going where no bunny has gone before. College.
Okay, for this kind of film, I think that's probably about right.
For this kind of film, but I feel like there was at least one episode of College Girls of in the Playboy magazines. Am I wrong?
Oh, I think they had Girls of the Pac-10, Girls of the Big Ten. I mean, I think they had a lot of those.
Right. For the girls of Zeta House, college life was no party until Shelley showed up.
Ugh. Too talky.
Wordy.
Yeah.
Well, I stumbled on a word.
Still too talky. It's like a sentence.
They wanted a role model. They got a playmate.
Okay, I like that one.
That one's good, huh?
Yeah, that's good. Good, punchy.
Brains, beauty, bravery. These girls got it all. They just don't know it yet.
Nope.
Okay, last one. Bodaciously going where no bunny has gone before. University.
Okay, did she go to a college or university?
Right.
I don't know that.
I know. They basically repeated that first one. They just changed up where she went.
Yeah. So I'm going to stick with they wanted a role model. They got a playmate. I think that's the best.
That's the best one?
Yeah.
Okay. Kick us off with your pickup line for The House Bunny.
It all started 27 years ago, said by Shelley. Doesn't support my theory.
No. It kind of tease us up for that she, and so I assume she started out the narration. It's been so long since we've recorded, I forgot a lot of this movie. So you're going to have to help us get through this for the poor listeners.
Well, apologies to Ms. Ferris and Mr. Wolf, but it's not a very complicated film. It's not like Mr. Holmes, where if you blink or go to the bathroom at the wrong time, you'll not be able to figure it out.
You're not gonna miss anything. Yeah. So, for a kind of, what do they call that? Like lowbrow? Would you consider this lowbrow comedy?
I think we call it broad comedy.
Okay,
that's a politer way to say it. But yeah.
So for this broad comedy, what did you feel about, like, was it a predictable plot?
Well, yes and no. I think it was predictable in that we all understood at the beginning of the film and we may talk about this film later in the podcast, but like from Animal House, I think any fraternity or sorority based film where the inciting incident is, oh no, they're going to get kicked off campus, Revenge of the Nerds, any of those, you kind of know, okay, there's going to be some challenges, but they're going to figure it out in the end, right? So in that sense, there's not I don't think there's a particular confusion about what was going on, but I do think it was humorously done. The thing with these movies about sororities is it gives you a cast of characters, an ensemble. And so you get to see the various different, the girl with like the brace that she doesn't need.
Right.
And, the pregnant girl and all these different things. So you get that opportunity to go through and they do a different job in this. It's just like with Old School, right? Mm-hmm. You see some different characters. And so the variances in the characters they pick rather, in my opinion, than the fact that you have this band of misfits. That's just kind of the Dirty Dozen all over again.
Right. Which is almost echoed in the casting, because since it is Fred Wolf, and I believe, doesn't he appear in a lot of Sandler films also, in addition to directing them, or is he just behind the camera?
I don't know if I recognize him by name, but yeah, a bunch of his buddies, Dennis Dugan and Alan, the bunch of those guys.
Thinking of Alan Covert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There is his crew that does make cameos.
Yeah. So Happy Madison from 2000, regulars, Dan Patrick, Alan Covert, Jonathan Logran, and Nick Swartzen all make cameos in this film as well. Dan Patrick is the cop, Covert's the waiter, Lofgren is the drag queen in jail, and then Swartzen is a photographer.
Which is interesting about Swartzen, because I actually didn't know he was a regular of Adam's crew. I recognized him from Reno 911.
Right. And so what about overall, because you like to talk a lot about character development, and so Shelley's character, she's our protagonist, and so in theory we're rooting for her to be successful in this venture.
This is kind of an interesting inversion of a trope, which of course always appeals to me, in that it's kind of the opposite of an ugly duckling. That she goes from being the quote unquote swan. There's a great line in there. I'm just walking around in the body God and Dr. Borkman gave me. And then it shows that she kind of does the opposite of the swan turn, right? Would that be a goose turn, gosling turn? and so that's kind of an interesting twist, and how they show that each of the different misfits, they have more to offer. And again, it's kind of like the popular kids, and it kind of, again, a la Revenge of the Nerds, that there was this sorority of nerds, and then this popular person came in and she helped them not so much become popular, but get some confidence, right? So it is an interesting twist, and I think that gets lost in the fact that it is a broad comedy, and it does star basically a playmate. There's a girl with stripper heels and a bikini, and I think it's kind of fun that they turn that on its head a little bit by having her kind of teach the others.
Yeah, you were talking about the costumes. Shelley's character had approximately 70 outfit changes. And so at a runtime of 98 minutes, it meant that every 1.4 minutes, Anna Faris's character, Shelley, was changing her outfit, which is just insane from an organizational aspect of the film.
My first note under costumes was bikinis. Oh, so many bikinis.
So many bikinis.
But the good thing about that for wardrobe is they're small volumetrically, so it didn't take up a lot of room in the truck.
There you go.
And so there's obviously this later a costume callback to Marilyn Monroe, right, with a white dress, which is, I think, hilarious, because in LA there are no steaming subway, like manhole covers. And then it was interesting that they use the cardigan to indicate intelligence. So cardigans can be sexy.
So was Shelley wearing the said cardigan, or was one of the other?
I thought it was Shelley. She puts on the cardigan to impress Oliver, played by Colin Hanks, who we've talked about a little bit recently.
We kind of skipped over cinematography. Was there anything that you noted that was done to further the story?
Well, there are many montages. Mr. Wolf and I are both fans of the montage. It opens with a home snapshots montage, and I always think nowadays that these are actual snapshots from the actor's childhood.
I agree.
Of course, with Photoshop, they only really need like a face, I guess, and they could put it in. But I just think that actors now have so much more, especially snapshots, available than they did before, that you can do that.
I wonder if studios now just have like shared files amongst all the editors. You know, the last time that Anna Faris did a movie, she
Right.
brought in a picture when she was 8, 12, 15, and so here's your Anna Faris at 15 that you can manipulate and Photoshop in any way you need to.
I would love to talk to the art department. Is there the equivalent of the Wilhelm scream, but for family snapshots?
Right, exactly.
And so there were a lot of that. I did notice that early in the film, it was striking that there's a close-up with light coming through a window that makes a horizontal bar of lighting across Shelley's boobs. And so when we light things in a film, we light things we want you to look at. So I kind of think I see what they were going for there.
Yeah, there's definitely something they wanted you to look at there.
Yeah. And then there was an interesting tracking shot of Carrie Mae going back and forth, which I thought was interesting, again, for kind of a broad comedy. And then there's another tracking shot as Shelley walks down the aisle in the meeting. You know, we often think in terms of broad comedies is that they don't really have a lot of cinematographic storytelling. But that's, I think, not true. I don't know how to shoot something funny, but I'm sure that there are very specific techniques that they employ. Maybe it's something as simple as in the edit suite, but I think of like, a whip pan or these tracking shots. They're probably things that work better. And so maybe they don't get quite as much credit as the big war movies, right?
Right. It's, perfectly said. What did you think of the acting choices of I would think at this point, unknown Kat Dennings and some of the other girls? It wasn't Melissa Benoit. Who was the tall, dark-haired?
It wasn't Benoit. Who was it?
Maybe I'm thinking of Kat. Oh, well, there's Emma Stone playing one of the girls.
Yeah, she played.
I thought there was now known. One moment. Catherine McPhee is who I was thinking of.
Yes, McPhee.
So what did you think of the character development of some of the other characters, like kind of the, at this time, unknown Kat Dennings, because I don't believe the Two Broke Girls had come out yet. We have Catherine McPhee. We've got Emma Stone.
So
Rumor Willis also.
I think Rumor was the one with the
brace,
the braces, and the Forrest Gump callback slow-mo running scene. So at this point in her career, I think Emma was playing more the smart girl, and she does that quite well. Anna Faris, as I recall at this point, was fairly unknown. And I thought it was, she trod a fine line to make her character, Shelley, seem actually like a playmate bimbo, but still be likable. That's a difficult, I think, thing to pull off.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out as you were talking, was her character supposed to be dumb or just kind of like naive and that, kind of hick from the South, or I don't know, like just, was she like, what do they call it? Like an ingenue or naive, or was she dumb?
I read it as she was dumb, but there's this Hollywood type of so dumb they're actually smart, right? And that gets kind of you sometimes see that with the hick, the person who is uneducated and can cut through the silliness with their homespun wisdom.
Right.
A little bit of that, but it was more, as I tracked her dialogue throughout the film, they really continued to kind of portray her as a bit of a simpleton. And I'm thinking in particular, near the end of the film, one of the characters says, Oliver is the kind of guy who wants to have a conversation before you hook up. And she's like, he's gay? So I don't really see a particular development in that sense. And her character of Shelley, I think, has less development, and she's more just
the catalyst.
Yeah, the catalyst is a great word for the reaction of the others as we see them kind of blossom. It's difficult to get a lot of character development when you have an ensemble piece. And I think of those, the Emma Stone character is the one that we see the most of. And she has like the guy she's interested in, and we see her kind of come out of her shell. And so in some sense, the other characters are really just supporting cast members, and it's more about Anna Faris's character getting Emma Stone's character to blossom.
I do think you're right that it is mostly Emma's character, but it is interesting that like we just see that small scene, but what a change Shelley had on. You have someone like Rumor Willis who has been, well, her character. I should look up her name because you're not supposed to talk about the Joanne. Joanne was wearing this brace, and then we find out really didn't need it. It was almost like a comfort brace for her. And when she got to see herself in another light through Shelley, or through kind of Shelley's confidence, they got to experience some confidence, and then it allowed them to step outside kind of almost this boxed in idea of themselves that they had.
Yeah.
And they got to flourish.
Yeah, the problem that I think you have in an ensemble piece, especially with a broad comedy because they're shorter, is you don't have a lot of time to really establish before and after for some of the other characters. So the example of Rumor Willis's Joanne is a good one. It doesn't really take a lot of backstory for us to figure out that it's good that the braces fall off.
Right.
Right. So that's fairly straightforward. And what we see, I think, is not a lot of development from Colin Hanks' Oliver. Right. He's really what is to be attained, not so much as to change. And I wouldn't say that the other sorority and fraternity people change a whole lot. Or it's really, I think, just about a little bit about Anna Faris, but more about the girls of the sorority as we see that their transformation.
And it very much speaks to that. I don't know what the best way to say it, but basically like the small institution going up against the big institution, and like the underdog story. And I think a lot of people can relate to a time when either you or your group was marginalized, and then how it's inspirational to watch these girls kind of go up against that and then be successful.
Yeah, I did not participate in the Greek system while at university, so I don't know if that's popular or if that's just for the Hollywood movies that they have the big meeting where everybody, we don't have enough votes, and then wait, Your Honor.
Let's bring in the donkey to kick the... No, just kidding. I'm mixing now.
But I like
movies.
that. Yeah, if Hollywood is remaking everything, why haven't we remade a donkey field goal kicker movie? I mean, come on. It's right there. And certainly there's got to be a Division I football team that has a horse or a mule or something as their mascot.
Absolutely. That has to come in the fourth... Wait, that's not in the rules. But it's not in the rules that it's not in the rules.
I've read the entire rule book from cover to cover, and there's nothing in here about a kicker has to be a human. Yeah. Yeah, it's right there. And then you could get a filly for the cheerleaders to use. Hey-o. Ah, man, this writes itself.
Oh, my gosh. Get to work.
Yeah. Start typing, monkey.
Is there anything you want to talk about House Bunny before we go into our categories?
Well, there are a lot of funny one-liners in this, and I have to give credit to the writing staff because writing funny jokes is harder than it appears. And one that I made a note of but had forgotten and need to write down because I love this line: "The eyes are the nipples of the face." That's just such a great line from Shelley. Got to reuse that over and over again. But there's nerd humor in there. They have a callback to a dip switch. Okay. Except for like nerds born in the late 60s, early 70s, who knows what a dip switch is? Well, apparently me and the screenwriter. They had a Days of Thunder callback. They used the phrase itchy ass cheeks. I mean, this is, maybe you wouldn't say like highfalutin humor, but this is good humor. They brought in some good humor. And I assume that's Adam and his dumb buddies sitting around together as a group coming up with these different lines. But that's important. This is a fun movie. It's a funny movie. It has hot Kit DeLuca, right? And I think that's an important part.
Yeah, it's just a fun movie. It's just, you got 2 hours and you want to laugh and
I have to say, I had seen this movie before Superfan RJ had picked it.
Yeah.
And I remembered okay, but I liked it more on rewatching than I remembered I liked it before. I think part of it is I see Anna Faris as different than this character, right? She's in some fun movies like What's My Number? But of course, she had a long stint on the Mom sitcom. In general, and probably her personal life with Pratt is also affected. But I see her as being more sophisticated in this character. And so I think that unfortunately colored my memory of this film, right?
And so do you think, it was 2008 sensibilities. Were there things that made you squeamish in this one? You just hear Playboy Bunny, and I guess you worry about the misogyny kind of that's going to be at work.
That is interesting you bring that up. We talked about it before we started recording that Hugh Hefner plays Hugh Hefner in this film. And they refer to the Playboy Mansion, and they have the three girls, Holly Madison and whomever.
Kendra and
the third one that no one ever remembers. And that was back, I think, at the tail end where Playboy bunnies were acceptable. Now, again, I identify as a third wave feminist where I think women can do whatever they want, including being Playboy bunnies if they so choose. However, a lot of feminists, I think, in 2024 would probably react pretty strongly to that idea of the Playboy bunny. And this film was probably couldn't be made today because of that, right? I don't know if it would find quite the receptive audience. There's a line in here where she says, I was in Girls of the Midwest, Girls with GEDs, Girls of Charlie Sheen. So I don't know if people now would get that gag, that setup, because Playboy had the Girls of blank, was a recurring thing for their issues. And it, at the time it was still part of pop culture. I did make a note, speaking of couldn't be made today, Catherine McPhee's character sings a song and she uses the R word in the lyrics, which I think Generation Z would probably be very uncomfortable with, and they probably wouldn't do that today. So there is parts of this film that is just Happy Madison at its finest, but there's parts that maybe they wouldn't be able to do.
Right. So Bridget
Markert, something like that.
Yeah. So Holly Madison, Bridget, and then Kendra Wilkinson were the three that you were trying to think of earlier.
Yeah. And what was the name of their show? Do you remember? Yeah, but isn't that funny? At the time, it was a big deal.
It was a big...
It was on E, maybe?
It was called The Girls Next Door.
Yeah. And there was, at that, I still think in 2008, people would go to the Playboy Mansion for parties, and the grotto was mentioned.
Yeah,
and it was,
I wonder, when did Hugh pass?
I do think it's kind of fascinating that a local celebrity had advanced the theory that Hugh Hefner preferred the company of gentlemen.
Right. That was always a rumor that I had heard also.
Which is interesting given the context of this movie, right? And there's the subplot where he really did like Shelley, but then like the weird comedian who was somehow a shirtless bartender at the Playboy Mansion had it out for her. There was like that, a little bit of a villain plot. And so I think that's kind of fascinating because at the time, I think they were trying to change the image of the Playboy Mansion from orgy headquarters to something different. So
yeah, I think that was about the time that his daughter, Christy Hefner, stepped into the CEO role or editor-in-chief of Playboy magazine. And I think they were kind of trying to clean it up. And I am curious because Hefner died in 2017. And I remember it was about a year or two ago, a series came out in which I believe Holly maybe participated in, but it definitely paints Playboy and not the, I guess, PG. We definitely knew naughty things happened there, but supposedly it was supposed to be with the understanding that the girls were consenting, yes. Yeah. And this documentary kind of brings up, some, maybe that wasn't always the case, unfortunately.
Yeah, if you look at the kind of the origins, obviously that's different than kind of this image, but every business has to shift, and respond to the changing times. And I just think, it's one of these things where it was a historically important thing, but its time had kind of come and gone. Mm-hmm. And this film, interestingly, I think timing wise, came out kind of at the end of that, right? Mm-hmm. When I was in, elementary school, that was a thing. Somebody would get their brother's Playboy magazine. Right. But now there's the internet.
Yes, it says it's exclusively online, formerly in print and currently online.
But it's such a different era, right? When it was racy to have a fully nude woman in a magazine. Mm-hmm. And now with the internet, the mind boggles at things that your kids can see online. Right? It's so different.
Well, it's interesting. It says after a year-long removal of most nude photos in Playboy magazine, the March-April 2017 issue brought back nudity. So they actually contemplated and executed not publishing naked photos, which just is crazy for...
Yeah, to think of
that's
Playboy.
What Playboy is.
Right. Yeah, at least to the rest of us.
Right.
Now, here's a question, kind of unrelated. When you passed and when it went from magazine to just online, what about all the women who had a Playboy bunny tattoo? Did they get that fixed up, changed a little differently?
Well, how would that change whether it was online or in print?
I don't know, just because the thing that it represented had gone away.
Oh, well, it's still there. I know that's such an iconic image, that bunny. I think
the bunny ears.
I wonder, how like they have those videos where they'll show Gen Z like a rotary phone and stuff. Yeah. I wonder how many generations you could go where that's still a recognizable icon. Like I wonder our kids who are in their 20s, would they, if we just showed them that that logo, would they know what it is? I bet they would. But then like if you went to 15, 16-year-olds, would they know what it is? I mean, it's just fascinating. Yeah.
So there's a funny gag in the movie The Long Shot where Seth Rogen, to infiltrate some neo-Nazis, gets a swastika tattooed on his arm, and then he has it changed to a stick figure because he's a Jew and doesn't like the Nazis. And I think my first thought was you could take that profile silhouette bunny with the two ears and make it into like the peace sign or something, like what would you do? Any tattoo artist who have history with this, go ahead and send us an email. Covering? What do you do?
There's a word for that.
Yeah. How do you morph it into something different? So, but then also 2008 really wasn't that long ago.
It really wasn't. So that's why I'm just surprised how far we've come. This was a woman who is using her body to get what she wants.
Right. And I think again, it's a broad comedy. It's not a deep assessment of culture.
True.
But I think that's part of what Shelley's character helps Emma Stone's character is to find that very difficult balance between, go ahead and if a guy thinks you're attractive, use it. You can lean into that, right, without it being manipulative. How do you find that line? It's obviously probably done much more delicately in other films, but it does bring that up.
And it shouldn't necessarily negate that she has any other qualities that are attractive, like her mind, her thoughts, her heart. Because obviously Shelley cares about all these girls and she wants to help them out. So do you always have to be intelligent, or can you just be a good person, a good, kind person who wants to help, people out as well as yourself? She started out the process to help herself out because she was homeless, basically. But in the end, she wanted all of them to get to live there.
Right. And so, as you mentioned, she doesn't have as much in the intelligence department, maybe, but she's persistent. And, there's something to be said for that. Mm-hmm. So
absolutely. All right. I imagine being a Happy Madison picture and a broad comedy that we are going to have some head trauma. Yeah.
Not as much as one would think.
My gosh, I'm shocked.
I'll broaden the head trauma. There's a part where Mona bites a guy's shoulder, which was interesting. Ashley punches Courtney in the boob, which is pretty straightforward for a Happy Madison film. I think that's in there. But then Shelley does take a spill and hits her head under a table. So we do have a little bit of head trauma.
We do have some. And I believe there was some romance. So do you have a smoochie for me?
Smoochie, smoochie, smoochie. I feel like I missed some, but I only have one smoochie listed. It says Natalie kisses her Colby. And I wish I remembered what I meant by that.
Or Colby. Is that a new word for?
Yeah, maybe so.
And a driving review.
Well, there wasn't a whole lot of driving, but Shelley did have a yellow, I think it was supposed to be yellow, faded perhaps, 1976 Plymouth Volare station wagon. Why do I know this? Because I rode around in one of those in 1982. It was white. It had the fake wood paneling on the doors. And I just remember as a kid, like looking at that. So there was a metal piece that was painted faux dark brown wood grain. And then they had other more metal pieces with a light tan wood grain that went around that. And I remember as a kid, because I wasn't familiar with the woody wagons, I was like, what in the heck is this doing on the car, right? Why would you take a perfectly valid painted white smooth metal and put this crap on it? It made no sense to me. And now that I know the history, it still makes no sense to me. But that was a piece of crap car. And I did mention, did they have to Foley the door creak and the hideous engine sounds? And my guess is the engine sounds were Foleyed, because if the engine was that bad off, the car wouldn't have made it through production. But it's possible the door creak was I guess you'd say, diegetic.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we go to the numbers?
Let's go to the numbers.
All righty. Like I said, this was in 2008, and House Bunny had a budget of $25 million. Domestically, it made $48 million, so kudos to them. They almost doubled it, which I guess would, if we believe the premise that marketing is as much as the production, then they almost broke even. Worldwide helped them out a bit because they made $71 million. So I would think that would have made this a profitable film. And adjusted for today, that's like them domestically making $72 million. So I would say a mid-range. It's not a Marvel movie, but it did well. IMDb gives it a 5.5 out of 10, so they didn't consider it very highbrow. Rotten Tomatoes, I guess we're not really considering it that either.
Yeah, but it's better than that.
It was enjoyable, yes. 43% of critics liked it, and 50% of audiences, I guess, gave it an, I don't know, is it a thumbs up or an 8 or 9? I don't know how, I can't remember how Rotten Tomatoes does it, but 50% of audiences considered it fresh. It is, let's see, an hour and 37 minutes. So how does that, what is the moral line you've told me before? Remind
86
me.
minutes.
86 minutes. So that is a little above. It's PG-13 and it is considered just a comedy. It was nominated in 2009 for the Best Comedic Performance at the MTV Movie and TV Awards. And unfortunately, it got the Hall of Shame Award in 2008 from the Alliance of Women Film Journalists. So maybe that's the misogyny part that we're the feminist part that we were talking about. They didn't appreciate this. Let's see what we're going to watch next week.
Well, I've seen this over and over again. Groundhog Day.
Oh, and we'll watch it again and again and again.
And again, until we get it right.
Yeah. All right, everybody. That concludes this episode of Dodge Movie Podcast. Thank you for your patience. We did take a little break because we had some family business to take care of, and everything is doing wonderfully. It was a successful break, I guess that I could say that we had. We're back. We're going to be bringing you weekly episodes, and we appreciate, like I said, your listenership and your patience in our little break that we took. Join us next week. Have a good rest of your weekend, but never forget,
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.